Welcome to this month's Fireside Chat from Sustainability and Entrepreneurship Center. And I hope that there will be people asking questions about this week's topic. We begin with the belief that systemic change is important to our continued growth and feasibility as a race and as a system. And one of the ways that we have seen as an individual level that systemic change can be initiated is through socially responsible business. And tonight we have an expert with us, Lars Svensson, the Chief Executive of the Sustainability and Entrepreneurship Center. And he's going to introduce himself and the mission of the center. And then we're going to grill him on just what can be done about the issues. Lars?
And thank you for coming tonight. I think we can almost introduce each other here tonight with that small of a unit. My name is Lars Svensson. I recently joined the Sustainability and Entrepreneurship Center here at SASIN. And the reason why I got attracted to this was just an opportunity understanding the platform that SASIN operates from and the influence SASIN as a school, SASIN as an institution, and also what the Sustainability and Entrepreneurship Center are doing. I got about 12-year background here in Thailand. I worked with companies like IKEA, was part of the team that set up IKEA here. And I've also been regionally responsible for the sustainability direction for IKEA in Southeast Asia, including Mexico. And that's another story. Thanks for introducing me and calling me an expert. I will call myself a practitioner more than anything. I hope when we go through this, this is part of my experiences working with the social entrepreneurship companies through the years, and also what I come across as a practitioner and being involved with meeting social entrepreneurs and looking at what's possible through Accelerator and other organizations. When we look at the aspect around systemic change, we are talking about a level where you can actually have a new way of doing things that change whole ecosystems or can change how things are being done on a global scale, the potential. And if you look at historically, see, we can get the presentation. The social entrepreneurs and the way they're looking at it, if you just go back about 10 years, it's a complete different situation today. The world of social entrepreneurship has changed significantly. When you talk about the aspect on profit or for impact, both when it comes to social environment, but the leading social entrepreneurs today, they're like any large corporations. They can be multinationals, they can be small startups, they can also be co-ops. But what you can see that several social entrepreneurships have a global impact today in the way they change the way business are being done and conducted. And profit is not a contradiction here. Profit is something, when you're looking at the triple bottom line with both profitability and people and planet positive, is something that goes hand in hand, and the most successful of the social entrepreneurships are delivering on the triple bottom line. If you can help me change the slides. And I'll go one back. Yeah, thank you. So corporations today play a key role also in driving this change and also looking at changing the conditions for having a better, more fair, equal, inclusive world. One of the most important United Nations Sustainable Development Goals are 17, the Partnership for the Goals. That means all sectors, whether it's government institutions, whether it's the private sector, whether it's capital, education, the academia needs to work together in order to solve the pressing issues we have ahead of us and the challenges the world is facing. And what you can see that engaging with social entrepreneurs and engaging with them either through capital or through partnerships is a way to actually drive that positive change. You as a corporate partner or as a venture capitalist can have that without foregoing the aspects around profitability. I'll do a short video here. This comes from one large corporation called IKEA. I've been working with them, as I mentioned before. And they have set up a complete separate entity within IKEA that works with social entrepreneurship. When they started working and trying to integrate social entrepreneurs in their value chain, they had Thailand as the first pilot, the first successful pilot working with one of the royal foundations here. And that took place through the IKEA establishment here in Thailand. The work started around 2007, 2008, and has continued and are a success that has been the basis then for how IKEA is modeling the social entrepreneurship program. This is a small movie that shows some of the initiatives IKEA is doing today. So they don't only work with social entrepreneurship in their value chain, they're also supporting social entrepreneurship by creating accelerators and working with partnerships like Ashoka Foundation and elsewhere.
In Sao Paulo, a lady lived in an apartment without any windows for almost 10 years. That story triggered Fernando. He decided to devote himself to improving the housing situation for the families living in Sao Paulo's favelas. Fernando became a social entrepreneur, and his mission and desire to scale up his work is now supported by us at IKEA Social Entrepreneurship. We want to make a better everyday life for as many people as possible. And since exclusion and inequality are global challenges, we have partnerships in all parts of the world. We partner with social entrepreneurs who use their business as a way to make everyday life better for those who need it the most. With some of our partners, we collaborate and do business with them to produce unique handmade collections and offer IKEA customers sustainable food items globally. And we both benefit. Our partners gain insights about global product development, and we learn about new handicraft techniques and sustainable food production. But we also support smaller local initiatives where a single IKEA store or IKEA country partner up with social entrepreneurs to make a difference. Together, these global and local partnerships support the creation of jobs and incomes for tens of thousands of people who are far from the labor market. Seeing the impact this has made us want to do more. So today, we back and boost social entrepreneurs whose work is not related to producing IKEA products or services. We partner up IKEA co-workers with social entrepreneurs and share our business knowledge and networks with them. This way, we support them to expand and have a bigger impact. It also gives us the opportunity to learn from them, like how to become a more circular, entrepreneurial, and sustainable business. And we will share our learnings to inspire others, increasing each other's potential to create lasting social change. All this aims to improve vulnerable and marginalized people's capabilities and their means of living. It's about making a positive impact on people and on society.
Right. So IKEA, in the scale of working with different types of social entrepreneurs, they have been working and learning from some of the leading social entrepreneurs in the world, and they're now engaging outside the IKEA value chain. And there you can see that it's not through funding or handouts, but it's through business collaboration or through setting up accelerators, where they are advising and connecting to the network and thereby helping these social entrepreneurs to grow and scale in a profitable manner. And Thailand has been a great source of inspiration in the world. There's a couple of examples here where Thailand, you can say, has been in the lead and showing the forefront even before we're really talking about social entrepreneurs as a concept. And next slide. So Doi Tung, or the Maphalawang Foundation, is one example where Thailand has created an export model on how to actually create social impact by also looking at the triple bottom line, a real social enterprise. They have exported this model around the region. So not only in Doi Tung, northern Thailand, where they managed to lift ethnic minorities around a total of 17,000 out of poverty through a self-sustainable business model. That model has then been translated to Afghanistan, to Myanmar, to Indonesia, and even to Latin America successfully. So you can say they've been real innovators, and IKEA learned a lot from the collaboration with Deutung and the Mer Wang Foundation. So the initial start took place when IKEA was launching its first store here, and 3 to 4 years before IKEA came and established themselves in Thailand. And the first collection that was built together with a designer from IKEA, together with the team of Deutung in northern Thailand, they also sent a designer at the same time to IKEA to learn production methodology. That designer contributed to IKEA collections around the world and brought his knowledge back home to Shanghai, and that been applied in more effective production methodology. There was not any money transferred in between other than the business generated through there. And you can say then that Deutung had an interest in becoming more efficient in the production methodology. They wanted to have a model on how they can secure a responsible supply chain, working with the right human rights dimension in the collaboration they had with the partners. And at the same time, IKEA learned from there and got design methodology and a collection that you can sell around the world that was still relevant to the consumers and well priced, and all the quality that lived up to IKEA standards. So after now, I think the collaboration has been basically going on now for 11 years. And the Deutung products are now sold in over 100 IKEA stores around the world. And they're doing a couple of collections every year. So at one stage, it was about 80% of the ceramic production that Deutung was doing was delivered to IKEA. So that's one example there. IKEA saw the successful and applied this model elsewhere, and then eventually created its own social entrepreneurship branch. Another, if we go back. So here's another Thai well-known individual. His name is Michai Viravaidya. He has created 3 social revolutions almost on his own in Thailand. The first one was when he managed to get the population control by claiming and marketing effectively then condoms around Thailand. So he was even called Mr. Condom at one stage. After a few years then, when the population growth was under control, there was an HIV explosion in Thailand, if you remember, and it's one of the worst affected countries in the world with the highest infection rate. And again, he stepped in and worked with his program and managed then to stop it in a very short period of time. And the next step is when working with the third social good is education. He's created a system here with the schools where it's showing an example of how you can create quality education in the villages on the countryside and with a self-sustainable model, and see it distribute and work, and where you actually create students that are good citizens but also qualify for university levels, and at the same time then allowing for families and children without paper to come into the school system and gain a proper education. So it's a very strong ambition when it comes to the school system that he's applying. Improve quality of life, raise income, improve education, knowledge and skills, protect the environment, promote gender equality. So he's the who's and who when it comes to the UN Sustainable Development Goals that he's applying in the school and applications they're doing. That one has now spread over 200 schools in Thailand. It has also managed to influence some reforms in the Thailand school system, working with the Ministry of Education. And you can talk about the real system change here with the Bamboo School as an engine of change in Thai education. The challenge is, and has been all the time, is being dependent on monetary support. There are certain parts that have been self-sustainable in the model, but this is a public good. So it's a system-changing social solution that's come up with, but he's working towards still finding a self-sustainable model where you can do that. And that has been the challenge. Here's another example of a social entrepreneur. A Swedish company that managed to then change how satellites were guarding weather and weather forecast. They made specific weather forecast for Central and Western Africa available to farmers. So they reach over 1.9 million farmers right now and over 1 billion very closely specific weather forecast that helps the farmers to better plan the farming and achieve then better income by doing that. And that's also a new way because the previous satellites was not looking at these areas where you had the poor farmers in Central America or Central Africa. It was more focusing on US and Europe. So that's a revolution in its own right. This is an example where IKEA has gone in and invested money. They are profitable in their own right. They are scaling in their own right. And they're not doing because of supportive funding, but they are also generating organic growth. Here's another example of a social entrepreneur also coming out of had started, but then was part of an accelerator between Ashoka and IKEA called Dela. It was Shid Liberty he founded Made in Africa. It was a social enterprise from the beginning that we're doing textile manufacturing, selling to the United States as a conscious brand. But then they had the opportunity to secure funding to actually scale by getting funding to acquire a 175-year-old Dutch textile giant in Africa. And you're looking at a company that had $289 million in turnover. It's like a reverse takeover. So they managed to negotiate a deal with them. They were much smaller than them, but with the funding they could. And the intention was then to change the way Vlisco was operating. Vlisco had Africa as the market. They sourced almost all the cotton from China. And that was non-sustainable cotton in that sense from certain parts of China, as you know, that has been disputed and controversial. So they were looking at securing and helping farmers, changing the ownership structure of the company by involving African middle management and African owners, and also then having a larger impact when it comes to diversity in the management, be it more women working there. And this model of then doing a reverse takeover or helping a social entrepreneur to scale by acquisition, then created the idea to do something called the Impact Transformation Fund. And that was based out of this social entrepreneur. So what the Impact Transformation Fund was looking at was turbocharging social entrepreneurship by leveraging established infrastructure markets to create impact at a scale then. So the problem that you can see for many social enterprises has been when they're small, that they're limited to starting new companies from scratch, and it's sometimes difficult to scale and achieve the impact and financial goals at the same time. The complication when it comes to social startups is they have a high risk of failure and challenge to reach scales and to have a meaningful impact worldwide. So the solution then has been to scale by acquiring other companies and transform them and their journey and looking at their triple bottom line, the ESG measurements they have. And that leads to an impact transformation. So the Impact Transformation Fund then deliver measurable social, environmental, and governance impact to investors, but not giving up on the aspects around profitability. So these companies did not have a goal of being less profitable than investment that you can get from other investment solutions. So if you look at challenge and solutions, so scaling for social entrepreneurs while remaining profitable and self-sufficient, having access to capital, and for capital to find access looking for social entrepreneurship and for the impact, access to acquisitions, accelerators, finance markets, partnerships, and know-how. Through partnerships for the goals, for the establishment of accelerators like this can be achieved. And we can see there's been a fundamental shift in this area over the last 15 years of work. Here's another example then of something I would call a social disruptor accelerator, but doing it on scale. They're called Unreasonable. It's a US-based that has a worldwide footprint. They back entrepreneurs, position the brand history in the right directions. They're really looking at the social environmental impact these startups and companies can do. So they are building a community between investors, between entrepreneurs, and between partners to solve pressing global problems. And they also work backwards with a deal flow to investors, to family offices and others. And they have partnerships with established large corporations who are looking to find ways of partnering with social entrepreneurs and create impact. If you look at, this is maybe a year-old numbers. So they have started 240 companies, more than that now. They raised over $4 billion, close to 5, present in 180 countries, and then impacted 549 million lives through this and how they've been working on a scale. So they partner with some of the biggest brands, you can see Nike, Microsoft, SAP, Johnson & Johnson, etc., to do this. And they see the challenge that we have it as one of the greatest opportunities that you have. So the change, it is propelled by ESG or the United Development Sustainable Goals integrated there. Family offices, private banking, sovereign wealth funds, pension funds, venture capital. You have international institutions like World Bank, ADB. They are looking for finding ways of investing capital, but also have the returns, but investment with impact and having returns at the same time. And social enterprise and corporations are seeking to do business together, and they can tap into the opportunities then what it means for corporations to either engage with or capital to engage with social entrepreneurs or source for social enterprises. So the how and the why. So as we said, the businesses, the corporate plays an important role around the globe in contributing to and solving some of the most complex problems of our time. Source for social entrepreneurship can be one way, and the benefits from doing that, it doesn't mean that you have to give up the profitability aspects, but you can also balance it with the social or environmental impact at the same time. So if you look at where the trend is going, social entrepreneurs have a growing impact and in importance. More and more new capital are looking for impact and chasing impact. More corporations seeking integration and collaboration with social enterprises. And you can see this on an accelerating pace and scale. So it's optimistic. So the crystal ball looks bright for a better, smarter, and sustainable world. Thank you.
Well, excellent. Thank you for that overview. Question I have, probably on behalf of many in our audience who are business people and accustomed to approaching things from a business perspective, who may not be familiar with the term social entrepreneur or social entrepreneurship. How would you explain it to them in a way that I'm sure would make it attractive to them to consider as an option?
Well, the traditional definition has been that social entrepreneurs work for a social good or environmental good at the same time while trying to be self-sufficient or profitable. And sometimes the overall arguing goals has been to do social difference, and they've been dependent on funds in order to survive over time. What you can see today that social enterprises, social entrepreneurs are no different from other entrepreneurs. That's the trend that you can see. Is more on the purpose of what they want to do with the business and how they do the business. So a more and more talent, and it could be the traditional talent you see from large corporations, are seeking new ways of actually applying their knowledge and being engaged in causes where they feel they can have a larger impact. So the nature of the traditional social entrepreneurs has changed to some extent. So I wouldn't do the distinction anymore. We talk about social entrepreneurship as a way of defining them, but more and more you see there actually are no difference. They are entrepreneurs trying to scale and trying to build a sustainable business, both from being self-sufficient, but also how they can have a positive impact in what they do.
Well, you just took the wind out of my sails.
Okay.
I was going to challenge you on that, because it's long been my perspective that an entrepreneur is an entrepreneur, and that business from the get-go is there to better people's lives. It's not there for the bottom line. The bottom line is important in order to keep the incentives going, but the initial starting point, and the people that I talk to who are getting into business early, setting up their own businesses, they have a passion to make things better for whatever sector they're addressing. Better typewriter, better mousetrap, better whatever you want to call it. So I think I agree with you 100%. I think that all businesses are out to improve the world. And it's interesting that we have to make this a point of discussion to say that really it needs to have an impact, a good impact on people. I've often said I don't know if it has to have if business by definition has a good impact, and then what's the difference? There need be no difference between social entrepreneur and just plain entrepreneur. So that being established, I hope many of the business people in the audience will accept that as well, or at least take it for consideration, and come back with plans to make more money and make more impact, as we say. Amichai is a very, very good case here in Thailand. He's one of the most forward-thinking people in the country in terms of business per se, and also in terms of social entrepreneurship. And I've had some long discussions with him, and it seems to me that consistently what he said, his hardest battles have not been with doing the object of what he's trying to do, in this case, open schools lately, but before that with the condoms, getting people to accept them. His hardest battles have been with entrenched systems, the way things have been. For example, with his school in Buriram, you've got educational guidelines that need to be met. And I'm wondering if you know anything about how he was able to confront some of these challenges and overcome them.
Well, I mean, he's an institution in his own right, and a revolutionary in his own right, and he's been one of the I think the largest forward-thinking thinkers in Thailand over time. So, but he also at the same time, he has a very, very strong network. So he dares to challenge, and he's been successful in doing that. The way he managed to drive his 3 revolutions was to decide and walk his own way, but also by powerful backing. And he's really a part of the strong establishment in Thailand, but still, even there, he's been challenging the establishment and daring to do it. And he's been able to do it because he's also been successful in what he's done. He's been proven his ideas right. He has achieved real result that no one else could have done or expected to do at the speed it's done. You can even say that today's demographic situation in Thailand with a rapidly aging population is partially because he was so effective in such a short period of time. Yes, over effective in the sense that you have a balance. So you might need to release him again in order to increase the nativity in Thailand. Yeah.
Yeah, you didn't mention an institution that I've long admired, which is Ashoka. Have you had any dealings with them at all through your career?
Yeah, we some of the examples here you saw the Impact Transformation Fund.
Ashoka?
Yeah, there was Ashoka together with IKEA Social Entrepreneurship, and IKEA and Ashoka had a program where they created accelerators, engaging then leading co-workers around the world. Some of the CEOs or the managing directors or the store managers around the countries. And they brought in partnership. They had McKinsey consultants also that wanted to also be part of this program, and Microsoft engineers. And what they did in the accelerator, they identified then promising social entrepreneurs that had the potential of system changing solutions. And they brought them into these accelerators. So during a year's time, the accelerator and the individuals then from IKEA, from Microsoft and McKinsey were working with the social entrepreneur and developing a strategy or whatever the need was from the social entrepreneurs and looking at modeling this and scaling it. But some of these social entrepreneurs, they were, I would say, even more advanced than Ashoka and IKEA, and the learning was more on the receiving end rather than on the giving end for the parties. But Ignitia, the satellite company, is one cohort that comes from Ashoka and IKEA's. The other one was the building company we saw the movie on, and Impact Transformation Hub with Chill Liberty is one. So many of these are taking place, and they are not necessarily connected to the IKEA business, but they're part of what the social entrepreneurship is trying to do in order also to create engagement, learn, and find solutions on how to do business in a different way also for these organizations.
Excellent. We've all agreed, or at least you and I have agreed, that we need some serious systemic change across the board. And the question becomes then, from our perspective as educators, how does a school like Sassin, and particularly with the specialized center that we have in sustainability and entrepreneurship, how can we contribute to that?
Yeah, I think, and that's one of the reasons I find the intriguing attractiveness of Sassin as an institution and the work that has been done here. There has been individuals and the institution that have understood the value of the thinking of these individuals that have encouraged, supported, and enabled discussion as engagement with some of these social entrepreneurs in early stage. The learning is two ways. SASIN and the Sustainable Entrepreneurship Center have something of value to offer these social entrepreneurs. And at the same time, the engagement on there creates learning on the other side, reciprocal in that sense. One good example could be the fact of the engagement that we're having today with Merfaldong Foundation, where also you have some of the leaders in the foundation also being alumni of SASIN as an example. And I think one of the aspects that you can see when you have a new cohort of individuals and human resource capital coming in to these social entrepreneurs that are seeking themselves into it, there's also a need then for understanding possibly what it means to be a social entrepreneurship and to try to scale under those circumstances and attract capital. So that educational part is something an institution like SASIN could be able to offer, and that would benefit the social entrepreneurs in the aspect, like there are any entrepreneurs. So the aspect around scaling, financing, capitalizing, marketing, product development, etc., are relevant aspects of what SASIN could do.
Do you think then that, okay, that's about our role. Is there anything that the role of business that can do to contribute to us, other businesses, other industries can do to help us forward with this project, with this mission?
Yeah, I think examples again with companies that are seeking to have an impact, that they can also see the benefit of engaging with social entrepreneurs, partially through partnerships, and it could be from product developments, it could be with collaborations done on mutual terms. In the sense, it's not about saving someone, it's actually out of respecting each other's knowledge and contribution in that sense. I think also by looking at the possibility of investing, but having the same type of criteria that companies are doing today when it comes to investing the money, they are also expecting that it should be an investment that generates some kind of return in the process, and engaging with those social entrepreneurs that can give that and offer that at the same time. And I think the discussion that we're having in Thailand and many countries also is ecosystem, national level of accelerators that are ecosystem for startups, or including for social entrepreneurs that can start up in their own rights, or small and medium-sized enterprises with interesting proprietary technologies looking for markets or looking for capital. These type of ecosystems are important to allow them to flourish, grow, and have access to capital, corporate partners, and knowledge or understanding of it, rather than having to run around on their own trying to access it. You have a lot of initiatives taking place around Thailand in smaller cities on the countryside, in Khon Kaen, where there are very promising initiatives, but it's a fragmented picture that you see. I think there's an opportunity here for both corporations and institutions like SASIN to support the development of such ecosystems in Thailand, where SASIN could play a role with its alumni network as a possible provider of mentorship and also access to network. The difference many times for successful entrepreneurs and social entrepreneurs is the strength of the network and access to a network, access to knowledge. That we see, that is the most value the accelerator can provide around the world. And that's no difference here in Thailand. And their corporations and institutions like SASIN can play a very important role.
Excellent. I couldn't agree more. And I've got a couple of more questions, but I'd like to open questions to the floor, to the Zoom as well. Anybody who has a question they'd like to fire out about now? Time to put him on the spot. Yes, please. Do we need a mic over there?
Thank you, Lars, for a great presentation. And I just wanted to ask you about your slide where you said social enterprise tends to fail. Not exactly the word, but so do you think having the support of accelerators will help to reduce that failure?
Yeah, I think they can play a role because it's not only social entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs also, it is quite common. Most corporations, most startups, etc., fail in them. And the successors are the one that you see that survive. But for everyone that are succeeding, there are many failures. And for anyone that has succeeded, many times there are many failures before you actually learn and come to the point. And that's where I think also accelerators can help with securing a network of mentors or advisors, or even access to capital or access to knowledge for scaling. So I think that's one role an accelerator can play. And accelerator could be in many forms, but just having access to a network of knowledge and a network of capital, that is sometimes the most difficult to achieve. And if I give you an example of maybe the alumni here in Sasin, most of them are very, very well connected, and they can lift the telephone and have access to very high levels in society or access to capital. For most entrepreneurs in the region or in Thailand, that's not an option or an opportunity. And that's where an accelerator or an ecosystem on a national level can make the whole difference.
Thank you. And would you say that social entrepreneurs fail, the rate of failure is more than?
No, not necessarily, because I think because social entrepreneurship, if you look at the reason why they created, many times there is a very strong passion and drive and people willing to put a lot at stake and risk a lot in order to make it happen with small means. And then sometimes also having access to support that maybe traditional entrepreneurs don't have. But when it comes to the part of the scaling and actually ensuring then the long-term sustainability of the survival of the company, I think there could be larger challenges in some cases. But we see example of social entrepreneurs that are basically rewriting the map of how financing and capital can access. The ITF is a good example where you see a social entrepreneur becomes the sort of aggressor or find a way of scaling by securing capital and just buying a larger company, and then increasing both its impact and its scalability at the same time.
Thank you.
There's 2 participants in Zoom would like to join นะคะ อาจารย์ยุพิน could you please open mic? You can open mic yourself ค่ะ
Hi guys, I'm joining from home, so thanks for having us here. And I
Hi.
think on Zoom we have a few faculty joining us, and we have one faculty from Basai, which is they run the entrepreneurship programs for the undergraduate students, and they have to come up with this kind of projects too. So and I just sent an email, not an email, on the chat asking for the other professor to share with us. I mean, because mainly we know at Sasin, we're focusing on sustainability, and within the curriculum, we including this kind of concern about the social entrepreneurship. So, and in order to create this kind of focus at the university level, pretty much lots of work that still need to be done. So probably before can you share with us, please?
Just so, are you answering the question on how this is possible then to actually integrate in a curriculum and start working with this in a way that also supports the development of the leadership and how this can sort of in Sasin's regimen or any education institution?
Yeah, because right now, let's say at Chulalongkorn University, we put this emphasis on our curriculum, right? So, but it's at this moment, things are pretty fragmented. So do other parts within the universities too, at Basai, for example, they run their own program, and this kind of integration is kind of if you want to develop the ecosystems to put things together and make it more meaningful, somehow it's gonna be less fragmented. So if you can give us more idea like how things can be done, that would be great.
Yeah, thanks. It's a very good question. And here's an example why we are talking about the necessity or the need for a, rather than having a fragmented solution, but where you fragment and also the resources, you don't have access to all the competence and knowledge and capital. It's better to have one on the national level accelerator. And that requires then partnership. And it requires institutions that maybe have the capacity or the geographic location to open up and partner up with other institutions. I can see SASIN play an important role in connecting with both institutions in Bangkok, like Chulalongkorn and Thammasat, but also with Khon Kaen, with Chiang Rai, Southern Thailand, everywhere. Because you're right in the saying that there are a lot of good initiatives taking place around, but everyone is sort of struggling for the same attention or for the same resources. And this is a discourse that's been going on in Thailand for some time, both on government level, but also with large private corporations. So I think the time is really talking for the possibility of starting moving towards a national level accelerator. The same type of discussions are taking place elsewhere in the region and including in countries like Sweden or England or Netherlands. No one has really cracked the nut on how to do that. And I think Thailand has a big possibility of actually getting there when it aligns its resources, partially because of how power is concentrated, but partially also because of the tradition that exists in Thailand and the fact that Thailand has been a leader and an innovator in this particular area around entrepreneurship and social entrepreneurship. So we'd be very happy to connect with you and invite you to join us in the work that we're doing. And we need to be more people talking about the same thing and finding ways of collaborating. So I think you passed a message in the chat, right? So we can continue the dialogue also afterwards. Thanks for the question.
Thank you.
Yes, I have a question. Yes, it works. Okay. No, I just have a very short remark. Thank you for the great presentation, and it's also very nice to meet you in person as a person who comes from Stockholm and did Stockholm School of Economics like I did. But so one very short point, and you touched upon it already, it is really about the ability to self-sustain and the dependency on financial aid, because a lot of what we see when it comes to entrepreneurship and partnerships is very much the engagement of companies. So we have case studies of companies working with communities or organizations in the Global South. So great initiatives going on. But then what we don't see is what happens year after this partnership stop, right? So that the entrepreneurs do not get this financial support anymore. And we see, for instance, from evidence in Bangladesh, right? You have Danone, you have the Grameen Bank, for instance, right? There's much debate whether the Grameen Bank really has been successful to empower women in certain contexts, because it was all great as long as the women were receiving the support. But then when the support stopped, what happened to them, right? And now we're talking about, at the beginning, like for instance, Mohammed Yunus, everybody was really applauding his efforts. But now 10 years after, what do we have? Are we back to the beginning? So this is a kind of a short point that I wanted to just to make, because here we're talking about systemic change, right? And definitely partnerships are important for systemic change, but how do we make change really systemic on the long term? And perhaps one way to go is to hear, I don't know whether there are success stories of social entrepreneurs that have received funding and have been able to thrive on their own, because again, most of what we see are stories of big companies, like it will be IKEA or H&M, in Bangladesh or Cambodia, working very well, trying to empower the organization in place. But then again, when they stop, we don't know what's going on, right? We don't have any more data. So that's just my point here.
Thank you. It's an important point. I think if I can comment on there are, of course, successful cases And I can give you one that's very nearby is Mer Falang Foundation in the Deutung. They've been self-sufficient since 2000, basically. And through their business venture and how they're working, they started off with funding initially and with the purpose of preventing the consequences of the growth of opium and the impact it had on the ethnic minorities there, both when it comes to trafficking of heroin, human trafficking, and the destruction of the environment. So that's one example of successful case. And the important part, the engagement of the partnership, I think, needs to be on terms in a way that also set up that it works towards a self-sustainable model. If not already sustainable from the beginning, but in the engagement with the partnership, have a roadmap towards self-sustainability. And there are good examples of that also in the network. And I would say that IKEA learned much more from Mer Falang Foundation in Deutung than the other way around. And that's one example of it. Then you have others, and there's a long tradition also. If you look at your traditional national development agencies like CIZ or United Nations, also where you have, once the money runs out, what happens then? It's the end of the project. So, but there I can see that there is a change in how money is being spent. Large organizations like World Bank, etc., are always looking at finding ways of possibly getting the money back or the returns in a way in order to be able to scale also the efforts so the money can last longer. So there's a I would say, mindset shift in how funding is going and where it's moving and where it's heading.
Yeah, so let me just say one thing very, very briefly, and then I will shut up. When it comes to with Deutung, I mean, I think it's a really good example. I mean, we spent weeks up there in Shanghai. We work with Deutung, I mean, with Mer Falang Foundation. But the issue is that the Mer Falang Foundation never left the area, right?
It's true.
So we cannot say that the farmers are empowered in comparison to the 1980s. That's for sure.
Yeah.
But Mer Falang Foundation has never left, right? So we don't really know what's going to happen if Mer Falang Foundation leaves. No. This is something we don't know yet, right? Because it hasn't happened yet.
Well, okay. So they haven't achieved the full self-sufficiency yet. You're absolutely right. The expertise, much of that expertise coming in, it hasn't been transferred over yet. So there also has been a shift in a way that rather than the Mer Falang organization handing over to Deutung Development Project and is run by its own individuals, they have converted the participants to become entrepreneurs in their own right. Some of them are paid workers, some of them are entrepreneurs in the right, and of course it is still a model, but it's self-funded in the sense with the model. But you're right, it hasn't reached the full goal of full independence as the plan has been. So there's still ongoing work on that area. I agree with you.
The center hopes to be able to help them on that journey.
We have another.
Okay, please do.
Bisna, would you like to ask?
Hello. I don't know if you can hear me.
Yes, we can.
Yes, I'm just joining from a cafe. So well, a little bit of an introduction. I'm from Basai at Chile. We actually spoke just yesterday, Dr. Svensson. I interviewed you, and well, I have a general question, just in light of social entrepreneurs and how they have this goal of kind of helping the people in need. What about, because I feel like these social entrepreneurs would have, I don't know, maybe more privileged beginning where they're provided with networking and whatnot. But what about these as part entrepreneurs that are constrained by their geographical areas? How are there ways they can, join that ecosystem of entrepreneurs? And if so, what are the ways? Yes, I guess that's my question. Thank you.
So if I understand it, is the question again that was similar to what you heard we discussed about a fragmented situation where not everyone have access to the same information or access to the same network. And what happens in those, you have, as you always have in any country, some people, some individuals, some groups are more privileged when it comes to access to information, capital, or network. The aim of and in the interest of the national development agenda of Thailand is to level the playing field by creating a platform where the access to transparent information is in the interest of that ecosystem, where stakeholders can contribute but also get back on what they need out of such an ecosystem. But that requires then partnership, so that schools on the countryside, incubators on the countryside would have the same access to a national level platform where they can get the knowledge, have the opportunity of meeting capital or showcasing their products or the solutions or do the pitches. Was that the question? Sorry.
Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to shift gears quickly for a minute because it strikes me that one of the things we can do is look for similar circumstances to Thailand's, particularly here in the region, and see how they've done and maybe adopt some of their solutions. And one glaring example out here is, of course, is Indonesia. And the entrepreneurship domain of Indonesia seems to have skyrocketed in a way. They've got many of the same systemic challenges, if you will, that we do, but they seem to be finding some solutions. And I wonder if you think there's something to be gained from looking at these solutions.
Yeah, I think learnings are to be made everywhere, but it's also important then that it's connected back into the particular circumstances that is related to the political structure, political power structures, the strength of the institutions, etc. So Indonesia has gone through over the last since 1997, has gone through a fair amount, if not a revolution, when it comes to how power is being distributed, democratization of the processes, and gone from a very a concentrated power structure to be a full distributed power structure, where companies were complaining initially was easy, you knew exactly how to bribe, and suddenly after 97 you had to bribe everyone and you didn't know whether it would help or not. And it was a bit of a free for all, but that has since then changed and it becomes accountable. And because of some of the challenges that exist in such a distributed model also, where you see a lot of logistic solutions or distribution solutions in entrepreneurship that has gained and become regional players, and logistic companies, e-commerce companies are built based on the circumstances in Indonesia, and using that with the volume of the market they have, been able then to scale and grow regionally too. So it's because of the particular circumstances. It's the same in Thailand that needs to be adapting and looking at what is also the unique composition and situation in here when it comes to how the government is organized, how the political structure looks like, and also how it looks like when it comes to the concentration of ownership in family companies and the stock exchange. So, but always possible to learn.
We have more questions from Zoom. Okay. Yes, you do. Please.
Well, dare I be a bit adversarial? Is this a place I can speak freely?
Please do.
Well, I don't think that we can say business is good, especially not as a core fundamental. I don't even really want to imagine what that Dutch company that was bought by Chid Liberty was doing 175 years ago. And I also don't think that we necessarily need a better mousetrap. So especially when that mousetrap, at one point, 175 years ago, let's say that, was built on the backs of the exploited and carrying the loot from extraction. And maybe now it's better, and it's built on the backs of the empowered. And maybe we're carrying sustainably grown cotton from Africa. But I think that in this room, like we're all very deeply entrenched in the betterment of business and committed to the acceleration of social entrepreneurship. And so I think that I wonder, at what point are we patting ourselves on the back for incremental changes? And as much as I want to evangelize the concept of impact-based businesses, I think that we need to be asking for more revolution before we call something revolutionary. And I think that we need to be questioning the accumulation of capital and where it's going and to whom it's going to. You know, if it's going simply to a social entrepreneur itself, is that necessarily good?
Is that a statement or was a question towards them?
Well, at the end, it was a question.
So, and the answer, it depends. So because you're absolutely right, there's no fix or one solution that would be the one solution that would fix everything. It's a continuous development, but you can see also how things are not perfect today, but has been bettered over time. The approach, the aspect, and whether the motivation is driving because that you have a green bond you're chasing, or you have investors requesting this, or policymaker forcing you to change your behavior. But if that leads to a change of behavior that has then a positive impact, in a sense, that necessarily in totality is good in its own right. And I think you could find social entrepreneurs that we had some examples here also that are maybe not in the end making that positive impact, that positive difference, or become capitalist in its own right for its own gain, and then quickly soon forgets what the origin was. But unless you have the discourses, and unless you have the willingness and engagement and the type of discussions that we see today on the larger scale, on higher levels, also with the young generation coming into school, I think you also see a progression compared to where we were. And you definitely have seen a progression compared to 175 years ago, where circumstances also were quite different. So, yeah.
I quite like to follow up on that point, and sort of, we sort of have this bucket that we call social enterprise. And I think sometimes we have to ask ourselves, what does that social mean? I mean, let me give you two very Thai examples. One is getting women's empowerment by getting hill tribe women to make jewelry. And that jewelry is so rubbish that you wear it once and it falls apart. And that creates an environmental disaster. But somehow we've called this a social enterprise. And the other example is Michai. Now, Alex will know that Michai schools have actually been criticized by some people because he makes the children do community work. There is no choice. And that has actually been likened to unpaid child labor, which is taking away local jobs from communities. So I think there's another really interesting debate that we need to have about what does that word social actually mean? Because just because I call myself a social enterprise doesn't actually mean my net impact is positive, right?
I think to the point, thank you there for both questions and statements. I think what we talked initially and adhered to some extent is, the social enterprise is actually, we talk about entrepreneurship in different forms, right? And it's not, entrepreneurs can have a social impact that is larger than a traditional social enterprise and with a different purpose. And these are, it's almost impossible to generalize. I mean, this discussion, we can go on forever in presentations too, and we just try to keep it on a level where we can talk about the principles behind it. But if you go down into every case, whether it's Foundation or Michai, if you start looking at an onion and taking away layers and layer and put it in the context they are operating in, whether it's the ethnic minorities in Northern Thailand and the consequences being there, you can see good, but you can also question, has it reached all the way it could have or could have been done differently? In Michai's context, he's operating on the countryside where you have a dramatic change on how the villages look like because of the labor migration in Thailand into the cities and what is left behind there. So providing that livelihood is in a way of also securing then income both for the elder that's left behind, but also the children supporting their own generation with farming, etc., and learning life skills that they can apply in order not to borrow money or spend money on Tesco Lotus or where was Big C, etc. So it's always contextual, right? So you can look at it and you can also then say, okay, so what would the alternative have been if that wasn't in place? Is this a better totality in then compared to where it was? And Micha is a very controversial person, and there are many dimensions of what it's been doing and also with clinics, etc. So it's many layers with him, I agree also. But that's, I think that's symptomatic also that this discussion needs to be held, and it's not about putting on rosy glasses and look at everything in one color filter. And the critical thinking at the same time needs to be there, and it also have to be a way of looking at a development path forward. And institutions like ourselves in SAS and SSE can play a role in there, but we also need to have the critical thinking in there and what we're seeing. That includes talking about the mousetrap and you know what the actual good it can be. Yeah.
Well, unanticipated consequences are everywhere, and just let me conclude on that. And I think with Michai particularly, the irony of him being able to bring in and control the soaring population growth that was occurring at the time, and now they've got a deficit. You know, they need people. And talk about unanticipated consequences. There's a terrible one. And I guess some of these things you just can't think through well enough. You just have to live with some of this. And there was a question back there, Ted.
Yes. So bringing it in a little closer to home, right? So as Lars said, right, with the new generations coming in to MBAs, EMBAs, some of them express quite explicitly that they are interested in society and then doing good. But then when they go to classes, right, sometimes it's not clear to them. Sometimes like, so my question is on how can we ensure the quality of education that ensure that integration rather than seeing the separation between sustainability and something else? Because sometimes students come to me and be like, oh, when I talk to you and when I talk to SEC people, then, I mean, I can see it very clearly. But then when they go to class, they can't explain to their friends because now they have to have a separate section on sustainability that they have to write up. And it's like, you know, now it's an additional thing that I have to think of rather than integration, it becomes separation. And now instead of like being advocate for sustainability, now they're like, oh, am I wrong? Or is it something going on that I don't know? How do I explain to my friends?
Yeah, also an observation and a statement, right? So here you also have, looking at the faculties and different individuals, there are different levels of integration or sustainability in different courses and different modules as it is. So you have the skills and values module that is clearly a compulsory dimension that has those dimension discussion points where all students have to go through when they start off. That's one starting point. But this is also a journey, and that everyone has a role to play in ensuring that we also meeting the expectations and also can have a leadership in order then to have a way of integrated in our education. Not only the entrepreneurship mindset, but also the sustainable mindset as a part of that mindset. So I think and to encourage and maybe have discussions around there is a perfect examples of workshops where you can actually engage with the students and actually have critical discussions and inviting different stakeholders from different parts with different viewpoints and let them, if not battle it out, but have discussions in the classroom. And I think the examples of the action learning labs also, where you have consulting, but you also have two aspects around the action learning labs is connected with sustainability is also one signal that it's not standing still. And there are a lot of good initiatives taking place. And within the research, and if you give an example of the social progress index research that's been done, that's one example of here is maybe something that we can find a way of integrating also in the education one way or another when it comes to how to measure social progress and ESG dimensions. Yeah. So need people like yourself and everyone else to pull in the direction. Yeah.
We've got time for another question or two if they're out there, and love to hear them. Sounds like we've got some differences of opinion here, which would be interesting to have brought more to the light. If so, yeah.
Hi, hi, Lars. I just want to get your take on it. It was mentioned a little bit. I think Alex kind of mentioned it a little bit about social enterprise, social entrepreneurship versus just regular. It makes me wonder. I've seen so many that do entrepreneurs or enterprises that clearly have huge impact. They don't identify themselves as a social enterprise or social entrepreneurs. And I've seen many social enterprises or social entrepreneurs that clearly are not creating that much real impact. They have the passion and the desire to get there, but they're not, I don't see them even able to scale or survive on their own. So, is there a real benefit in having that distinction? Is there a real benefit in having that, I am a social entrepreneur or I am just a startup, et cetera, et cetera?
No, thanks for the question. I think we touched upon it here a couple of times. We say actually we are talking about entrepreneurs with different forms of impact. So when and sometimes there are different avenues and arenas that you would act on and have access to capital because you are sort of labeled as a social entrepreneur, depending on who your stakeholders are, etc. But it would ease the discussion, I think, if we look upon them as being entrepreneurs, nothing else. It's the same discussion we have on, yeah.
So from your response here, it seems that the thing one should be identifying is the impact that an entrepreneur or an enterprise makes, right? It should all be net positive, but to what degree? And then the whole ecosystem competes based on how much impact one can create. Does that have an opportunity of being a reality? And would it be a good reality to push for something like that?
Yeah, I think impact in its own right, it's how being measured, right? So one aspect that needs to be coming from the start is the long-term sustainability of the entrepreneur in itself and the business itself. For that, it requires one way or another to have a sustainable business from a profitability generation point of view. But then the impact it can have on environmental and social can be different. And it's not, and some, depending on the type of business, where you're operating, the stakeholders you're involved in, will also then help define on where you will have the impact and how big the impact will be. So I think the impact measurement and where the discourse has been broadened and where you can see from measurement also that having a social environmental impact and having that as part of what you're achieving with your business doesn't necessarily mean that you are less profitable. There many cases is also shown that companies that have that and achieve to deliver on those dimensions are also successful, both from a long-term sustainable point of view and a profitable point of view, partially because of what it can do from a coworker engagement, access to expertise, access to markets, brand building, access to capital, etc. We had a low impact of a bottle here on the floor.
Low impact there. Excellent. Any other questions? All right. From the Zoom, no more? Okay. So I guess you've answered everybody's questions and they're all sitting out there saying, I'm very content with where we're going. But if you're not, or if you wake up tomorrow morning with more questions, please get in touch with Satsin and with the SEC and with Lars in particular. And let us know what your concerns are and what your suggestions are. And also you can come in and see us. You can come in and sit down and talk with us. We'd love to have the discussion. And with that, I will say thank you very much.
Thank you.
To Lars, and we will look forward to seeing everyone next month.
Thank you.